Hey, good morning, Doug Smith. I am broker owner of DHS Realty, and today is Hump Day, Wednesday, part 3 of 5, working with a tenant. So far, we left off yesterday. We got to the house about when you get to the house, you don't want to show up a minute late, a minute early. You want to be there about 15 minutes beforehand to get a good feel for your the neighborhood and just get a comfort level. No reason to be stressed over getting to the house. So I'm kind of anal about that. I leave super early on any listing, and I get there. Usually, I'm there about 30 minutes early. I'll find a park or something and park in front of, and I will just kind of collect my thoughts. I'll pull up to the house about 10 till. I'll text the landlord, "Hey, it's Doug with DHS Realty. I'm here a little early. I'm good for 10 o'clock, or we can make it now." They'll say usually, "Come on in." I'll go up. I'll be dressed professionally. Again, slacks, a button-down shirt. You don't want to show up with Nike flip-flops and your butt crack showing with shorts on. So, let's be professional. We are professionals and we are representing our brokerage. So you'll knock on the door when it opens, professional handshake, walk in, have some rapport, have some social skills, know what's going on in the world. If they have dogs or cats or kids, you want to play with them, not in a Michael Jackson way, but you do want to, say, "Oh, what's your name?" And "Where do you go to school?" And if they're a little older, like teenagers, if they're in sports or band or theater, I was in all those. So, it's best to be able to relate to almost any type of teenager. Teenagers don't all play sports. So, you want to have a rapport. If you build a rapport with their kids, you'll get their business. If you are aloof to their kids and don't know how to relate, you probably won't get their business. So after talking with them for a little while in the foyer, you walk around the house, you talk about resale. Even though it's going to be a tenant, you talk about what a tenant might be going through, and that is that a tenant is going to want backyard shade, so you don't want a backyard that faces west. A tenant is going to want probably a master on the first floor. And it's going to be in a fairly good shape, the property. At that point, after you've looked around the house, just say, "Hey, let's have a seat. Let me show you what I got." You're going to have to learn to read upside down, because when you sit down, you're going to show the documents to them, and you're probably going to be, looking at it upside down. The first thing I like to do is I do like to pull up the tax roll, make sure that the landlord is the actual owner. And at that point, I flip the tax roll and have a CMA of rented properties in the area that go back about 6 months. I might go back a year, and it's going to give me a price per square foot for the properties that are for lease. And generally, it's going to be different than a CMA for sale. It's going to have like $1 or $2 a square foot per square footage. And at that point, you're going to explain to them kind of ballpark of how the agent is paid when you lease a property. Now, all commissions are negotiable, but when I work with a landlord, my personal business plan, which is different than my agents, because at my company, DHS Realty, agents are able to be unleashed. I don't pull the reins back. If they want to negotiate a commission that's different than what I do on my end, then that's fine. It's America. They can do that. So, what I generally look at the landlord and say is this: here's how I get paid. All commissions are negotiable, but when a tenant agent brings a tenant, I'm going to do a lot of work on the back end. It might look like I'm not doing a lot of work, because I might look like a duck on a pond that's just floating around, but underneath that water, that duck is moving, violently with their feet to move around. So I'm going to be, when a tenant agent brings me an application, I'm going to run a background check. I'm going to run a criminal background check. I'm going to give them my opinion of 30 years experience on what I think about the tenant. And at the end of the day, they're going to make a decision on whether they give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If they give them a thumbs up, that means we'll have an executed lease. I'll draw that up on my end as a landlord. I'll make sure that my landlord's protected. I'll send it over to the tenant agent. When the tenant agent agrees to it, generally that will execute it if the tenant agrees, and there'll be no changes whatsoever, and the lease will be executed. At that point, I'm going to demand from the tenant agent 1 full month's rent plus 1 full month security deposit. I like it in a wire or a cashier's check. The agent that has the tenant, they're going to get paid, generally speaking, a percentage of the first month's rent. The security deposit goes to the landlord. So the first month's rent will be lost with me because 50% goes to the agent representing the tenant and 50% goes to me because there will be nobody that works harder other than the agents in my office for landlords. So I demand a 50% of the first month's rent. That's my commission. That's negotiable, but it's my business plan. So basically, the first month's rent is lost, and the landlord will eat that. They'll get the security deposit that will be due back to the tenant at the end of the year if there's no issues with the house and destruction and things like that. So at my company, I cut the check immediately to the tenant agent upon getting that first month's rent, but you do get paid on the first month's rent. You don't get paid on prorated rent. Payments to the both agents are done on the first month's rent, the full first month's rent. And so I explained that to the landlord. Pretty basic understanding. Most landlords understand it. And at that point, you start going through the presentation. I always like to have a packet on myself that establishes some rapport. It talks about my history in real estate dating back to when I was in college. I was an RA. I love working with people. I believe I have really good social skills, and I believe the agents that I attract have great social skills. I'm not for everybody, and I don't want every agent. I want those that are going to be an asset to our firm and are going to be a good representation of me in the field. And so I'll talk to them about my resume, dating back to how long ago it was I got into real estate, which was basically in college. When I was a sophomore, I became an RA at Southwest Texas State University in San Marcos, and I fell in love with the social aspect of real estate, and I catapulted that into my professional life. So I'll talk to them about that. Talk to them about a little bit about my hobbies and things like that, and then basically I'll show them in my packet the IBS, and my resume and things like that. Then I'll move straight into the listing documents. So I'm going to present them information about brokerage services. I'm going to go over that real generically. It's just a law in Texas that I give to a buyer, seller, tenant, or landlord on my first face-to-face. I'm going to have them acknowledge it by initialing it, and then I'm going to turn that page over. And then we're going to go through the listing to lease. It's an exclusive right. So no matter who they find as a tenant, no matter how that tenant's found, I'm going to get paid. And it's going to have in there the commission that 50% goes to the agent bringing the tenant, and then I get 50%. All commissions are negotiable. It's just my business plan. And it's going to be the first month's rent that's basically lost for the landlord. And at every point throughout that listing, I'm going to tell them that, hey, I'm ready to go if you are. All I need is a spare key. I got my sign and electronic key box on the front door. Again, you don't want to put a combo on a lease because if somebody gets a hold of that combo, you don't know who's going in that house. So as a rule of thumb in our company, we put electronic key boxes on all listings. They're about $110. I'll cover them for an agent if they don't have one because that's how much I feel about safety and representing the clients of DHS Realty, which are sellers, tenants, landlords, and buyers. So we'll put electronic key box on that door. At some point, they kind of look at each other and feel good, or look at themselves and feel good about my listing presentation. I'll just look at them and say, grab a key and I'll go get my sign and key box. I get up and start closing that transaction. I'm going to wait for the IBS and the listing agreement. And tomorrow, Thursday, I'll start on what happens as I leave the house with a sign in the yard, a key box that's electronic on the front door with a key in it, and explaining to them about safety. Okay, we'll start that tomorrow, safety, and on Friday we'll end with going back into the MLS and inputting that listing. Y'all be safe. Go get some.